You're listening to the Fit Bottom Girls podcast, the only podcast for active, athletic, and adventurous women and those who aspire to be. We've got your back as you navigate the ups and the downs of motherhood, midlife, and menopause. I'm your host, Allison Hylett, here to remind you that female isn't fragile. I'm a strength, conditioning, and nutrition coach who's trained hundreds of women to achieve their goals to get fit, lift heavy, go the distance, and feel like a badass in every area of their lives. Each week, you'll hear from me and some of our awesome guests as we educate and empower you during each stage of your fitness journey, whether you're already crushing it, fighting to get back out there, or starting from day one. So friends, let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast. Today's episode is a game changer for anyone who's ever known what they need to change about their habits, but just can't get themselves to do it. And let's face it, that's been all of us at some point in some area of our lives. So we're diving into the neuroscience of behavior change, including why traditional habit-forming strategies don't work for most people and what to do instead. To break it all down, I'm joined by Dr. Kyra Bobinet, physician, public health leader, and behavior change expert. She's passionately pursued and studied the truth about behavior change for nearly 3 decades. An award-winning health innovator and thought leader, Dr. Bobinet has an MD from UCSF School of Medicine and an MPH from Harvard University. She belongs to the Stanford Medical School AIM lab, where she has taught on health behavior change and is a CEO founder of Fresh Try, a behavioral software based on the latest neuroscience of habit formation and lasting change. Dr. Bobinet's current work centers around a small but powerful part of the brain called the habenula that either fuels your motivation or shuts it down completely. We also talk about her iterative mindset method, which quite simply has us viewing ourselves and our growth in iterations or versions rather than successes and failures. By making that simple change and adopting this neuroscience-based approach, you can stop the cycle of frustration and build habits that truly last. Whew. This is a good one. Let's dive in. All right. Welcome, Kyra. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's awesome to be here.
I have been a health and fitness coach for, well over a decade. And one of the biggest nuggets of wisdom that I've gained in that time is that most people have some idea of what they should be doing to get healthier and fitter. Let's face it, there's no shortage of information in the world right now, but they just can't get themselves to do it. They are struggling with changing their behavior, changing their habits, dealing with failure and frustration. And they know what they need to be doing, but they just can't follow through on those commitments and make those changes stick.
Yeah. The missing piece, as far as I can tell, is that people don't know about the brain. And the brain's intimidating. Don't get me wrong. I did not appreciate neurology and neuroscience when I was in my training days and in my education days. But for pragmatic reasons, I kind of came to, it's the brain and what's going on inside the brain that's happening. And so my job is to translate that into everyday life. And hopefully we can give everybody a sense of it's not you, it's this, so that they don't wallow in unimportant stories.
And that's the key too. People believe they are the problem or there's fundamentally something wrong with them. And there's like a fixed mindset that kind of grows around all of that and keeps them small and contained. And so I am so pumped to nerd out with you today and share how to use the scientific insight that we have and make those changes stick. How do we create lasting change? Why is there still this gap between what we as humans want to do and what we actually do? What is going on there?
Yeah, basically it's freedom from suffering. Suffering is the unnecessary part of pain. There's a certain amount of pain involved with just adjusting to new things or changing your life or whatever. But the suffering aspect is, as they say, optional. And once you know what's going on, you just scrape away any of this unnecessary emotional suffering, self-blame, shame, all those kinds of things. And so I think that we can do a good job of really convincing people with the science that that's not necessary anymore.
Yeah, that would be great because it is something that just derails people so quickly. They expect it to go one way, it doesn't go that way. And then it makes them feel bad about themselves and that they don't want to continue. But that's just actually part of the process of like, if you're going to try things, they're not going to work and you're going to have to adjust your approach and you're going to try again. But if we could get rid of the meaning that we put on that. Like, what does that mean about us as
narrative.
people? Yeah.
Mhm.
And we can just move on and let it be
Yeah.
curiosity and non-judgmental awareness leading the charge there. Like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else now.
Yeah. So should we get into the brain mechanism real quick?
Absolutely. I
All
cannot
right.
wait.
And for those of you who are not scientists, do not fear because this is going to be super simple. Basically, there is a explosion of information and evidence on a area of the brain that nobody's ever heard about called the habenula, Habenula. And it's about a half a centimeter big. There's two of them centered in your brain, both this way and this way. Okay. And so that means that they're in the deepest part of the brain, the most layers of other stuff on top of them. And in all this research, the story that has emerged is that this is the master controller of our behavior. And so when we talk about behavior change or I want to get healthy, this is automatically the most important brain area to know about. Okay. The other areas that it controls and that it talks to, like your rewards loop, your reward system, dopamine, serotonin, some of these common things that we know about. The prefrontal cortex, for example, is another one that it does a lot to. And it turns out that this area controls all of our effort and motivation because its job is to keep us safe from danger. And the way that it does that is it tries to predict, like, is this going to work out for me or not? And so if you try something like, I'm going to start running or I'm going to start swimming or whatever my chosen effort is going to be, this part of your brain is going to tell that narrative that we talked about in the opening here of, well, you can't do that because you've never been a good swimmer, or that kind of stuff starts to come in as the predictor. And so then we have a negative predictor bias. A negativity bias is what it's called in behavioral science, where in short, plain language, it's pessimism. We don't think it's going to work out for us. And if that happens, if and this is happening subconsciously, but if the habenula has decided with its gavel that this is not going to work out for me, then the second thing that happens is that it just powers down all of my effort machinery. It powers down my motivation. I all of a sudden can't get up the next morning and start running, even though I've been on a streak. Something like goes off. And then because it's silent, because it doesn't produce a painful ouch kind of feeling, then we're the only ones there. So we just blame ourselves. Like, you must have done it. And that's the erroneous, that's the mistaken way of thinking about these things. And that's how people get to shame, self-blame, feeling like a failure. Nothing ever works for me. Been there, done that. I used to be able to do this. Now I can't, or I should do this. And one thing that's universal in all of humanity is that at some point or another, in some domain of our life or another, we're all going to hit something called a no-do gap, where we accidentally trigger this part of the brain. And then we know what we want to do. We want to go running, but we don't actually do it. And I'm sure you see that every day, many times a day, right? Twice on Sunday, as they say.
Yes, it's a very common phenomenon.
Yeah. And anybody who's been a clinician or a therapist, a coach, a teacher, a trainer has lived in this world. And it's amazing that when you say the no-do gap, like all people who've ever tried, you could be a parent, all people who've ever tried to influence somebody else's behavior light up and say, oh my gosh, that's what it is.
That's a
nice
thing.
To have,
it has a name.
Exactly. It's nice to know what it's called because we all suffer from it. And another point that really surprised me in my research was that you could have a no-do gap in your primary relationship. I used to have a yelling problem because my family, we were yellers when we got hopped up.
Same.
And yeah. And so this is my second marriage. My first marriage, we just were not compatible. And, when we first started, I'm married to the kindest man on the planet. And he's like, hey, why are you yelling? You don't need to bring all that. And at first I was really embarrassed and just didn't have the self-esteem to deal with it. But I had a no-do gap between what I knew I should do and then what I actually did. And what happens is that over time, if you just keep working the problem, the time gap between your knowing and your doing starts to converge, starts to come together until the day where you know and you do at the same time, if that makes sense.
That's what we want. Yeah.
Yeah, but people get so bummed out that they lose faith in themselves, or that they have some sort of imaginary timer. Like, I've got to not yell at my husband by next month. And this is where SMART goals comes in as sharp objects. And we'll talk about that. But if they understood the actual process of, oh, after I yelled, I realized sooner than last time by maybe a second that I slipped, and I call that the Homer Simpson dope, like, but if you keep working it, and now I I can count on one hand in a year how many times I feel this no-do gap. So it's domain specific. I also have a no-do gap around sugar still, no matter how much I've tried and what I've tried. And I'm still working that problem. I literally ate for dinner ice cream and a sundae last night because I was tired, because I was stressed, because I was feeling badly about not having the energy to go tackle my laptop after hours, after having worked 36 hours straight on a problem with our exec team. So we all have these domain specific areas where we've got it buttoned up, and then other areas where we've got these gaps, and it's totally normal.
Yeah. And it's not insurmountable. People try a little bit and it doesn't work out. They assume, and I've seen this in my coaching, that this no-do gap is insurmountable for me because something about me, I'm flawed. They read into that failure, they make it mean something about them. But I've also seen many times people bring that together where they're just like you said, first it's reflective. They realize it after they've done the thing that they knew better. And then as they keep working it and they develop different strategies and more presence and more awareness of their behaviors and their thoughts and their actions, and then they start to get to that place where they see it and there's a pause, but it's enough for them to redirect. And they actually start to make that jump from knowing to doing the right thing. But how do we do that? How do we get people there?
Yeah. Your job, I think, is to explain the game. This is the game you're playing, and here's the rules.
Yeah.
That's why we want to bring the brain into this, because people don't know that there's a player on the field who's just going to sweep you all of a sudden, like an invisible ghost player.
Yeah.
And we need to unpack that so that they don't make the wrong conclusion about themselves that then further gets them into wallowing into how bad they are. And that's just wasted time, because the sooner you can, as a health coach, get the habenula to turn off, like convince somebody that, hey, you're not bad. This happens to everybody. Yep. And there's an explanation for it that is more neuroscientific than you being a horrible person. Let me convince you that you're not the worst person on the planet by just saying there's this brain mechanism. You happen to trip it. No big deal.
It's not a flaw.
Tripped it.
It's designed this way.
We didn't know it existed.
Yes.
None of us did. There's probably like 0.001% of people who've ever heard of this thing in America, let alone the globe. Yeah. So you're in good company now. Just rejoice that you are finding this information. You're finding the truth about that you can really, hopefully people who are listening will just replace that story of, oh, I'm just a loser, or I'm just whatever, or I'm disappointed, even can turn this on to, oh, maybe there's a different way to do this. And I see a world in which we coach and guide people all about habenula management, because I'm the person who knows the most about this on the planet right now in terms of translating it into behavior. And what I'm finding is that any given day, I'll say, oh my gosh, my habenula is on because I feel depressed, or I feel anxious, or I feel like there's this no-do gap between me and my laptop, or like those kinds of things are happening. And my husband and I have this dialogue that is very organic around it. So I'm wondering, I find people to be geniuses. I find them to be incredibly smart. Once they have the concept, then they can just start to build out insights and share it with each other. And I really see that world where we just have this whole paradigm shift as a species. This is the most important thing, because I mean, it seriously controls everything. It controls sleep, hunger, your perception of yourself. It controls your motivation. And what seems to be the antidote for habenula is, I'm not done yet. I didn't fail. If I can convince the world failure is an illusion, and you can't fail at your life, at being you, you just can't. You're just learning. And there could be things that are like really unpleasant. Like, I don't want to repeat that again. This is the area of the brain that keeps you from repeatedly touching hot stoves over and over again. So it's your friend as much as it is an obstacle. So let's not demonize it. But habenula management is the new behavior change.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see what additional comes out of this. It reminds me about the importance of having support from a knowledgeable coach, or someone, a therapist, or somebody who understands the process you're going through is complex. And that it's not just a matter of no excuses and, oh, you got to be disciplined. No, this is complex. This is a longer term process than flipping a switch and going, I want to be a runner now, so I'm going to go for a run. It is more complex than that. And if you understand that, you're more likely to stay in the game long enough to see the results start to build some momentum and see that the outcome is starting to move or come to you rather than you just getting stuck and going, well, here I failed another thing. So I'm
Right.
just obviously stuck here, which is really something that somebody who is qualified to talk about behavior change or to work with you on changing your behavior is going to tell you
Yeah.
that's not how it works. And so it's okay that this is happening. We just have to have a different strategy or a different approach or a different system or more support.
I find that the best clinicians across the board, or I should broaden that, the best behavior change professionals, because I include sports coaches and teachers and therapists, right, are iterative. They're supporting iterations. The base pattern is that really great professionals who are effective at helping people change behavior and do it long term, lasting
Yeah.
behavior, are intuitively teaching their clients, their patients, their students, their trainees how to iterate.
Yeah.
And even the really, really good ones, before they end the session, they almost like bubble wrap you. Even if you have a SMART goal or whatever, like they bubble wrap you in, well, if this doesn't work, it's not you. Or if this doesn't work, that's the majority of people. We don't get it right on the first time, but you're getting information by putting something into place, putting that intention there. You're seeing how the subconscious part of you accepts or rejects it. And that allows you to iterate or tweak it to get more appropriate for what the inner part of you that's got to do the behavior for what they're willing to do. But you don't know that out the gate. And so just being able to forecast that, I know that you know that it would be very unlikely this would be a bullseye right now. And that helps with the callback, because one of the big problems with therapists, clinicians, is that when somebody doesn't do what we all agreed that you were going to, don't they avoid you? They ghost you,
Yep.
right? And ghosting is a habenula event that the clinician didn't predict or didn't give bubble wrap around. So you need to install a callback mechanism for their good and yours to give the support a chance to take, because otherwise that's just another thing they failed. Oh, I failed health coaching. And now that category has been like deleted in their mind as options.
So that's like expectation management.
Yeah, it's all about reframing and pro-framing. Like if I could make that word up. If I were working with you, I would make sure that I could feel out how bad or how severe your self-blame is. And I could give you a callback mechanism to de-shame yourself, some de-shaming spray as you go out the door. And I could fall on the grenade myself. I could say, hey, Allison, I'm not sure I got this right because I just met you. But I know that people who find success, they usually try on X number of outfits before they find the one that really works for them right now. And this is how this goes. And also, I would prefer for clinicians and behavior change professionals to really understand how habit formation happens in the brain so that they can properly guide people to get them out of a lot of urban myths around 21 days to a habit. I mean, at 21 days, you basically have a little germinated seed breaking through the soil in terms of like neuroplasticity, in terms of like your brain rewiring itself. And then it takes a full year to get a full, but then it's like a teenager, like they're full height, but they're not girth. They don't have their man or woman weight on yet, and so, so they're kind of spindly. And so that's at a year, and that's just nature. So then what do? We have to keep going. We have to be in effort. And I think a lot of people are bummed out by that, but I'm like, no, you're going to be in effort around something the rest of your life. You might as well have it be around something that you feel good about, that gives you energy, that makes you feel powerful, because people feel powerful when they can control their behavior. Yeah. The other thing that is really important for people that they don't know about, that hurts them because they don't know about this, is that when you have a full, like, here's your old habit, here's your new habit. Your new habit's this teenager kind of lean, and the old habit's really robust. Over time, if you stop doing the old habit, it'll become like a busted highway, potholes, and fall into disrepair, but it is still very much there. And the biggest mistake people make is they think that this is over. Yeah. And so then their story, when they, like me with the ice cream, when I'm tired, when I'm stressed, when I'm emotional, whatever the case may be, I'm going to revert. I'm going to be on that old highway being like, oh my gosh, how'd I get here? And so as a coach, managing that, it's not a matter of if, it's when you find yourself on this old highway, be not afraid. All you need to do is find an exit ramp as soon as you can. And sometimes the exit ramp is 3 miles from here, and sometimes it's 1,000 feet. But the main task at that point is like let it go. It means nothing. Get back on the new, beef up that new wiring, because the more you practice this new habit, the stronger and thicker and more robust and dominant it gets. So these two are kind of in this dominance dance over the course of our lives. And it's just a matter of like, where's your investment going? Is your investment going here or is it going here? Because you can definitely drop this and then beef up this old one if you relapse hard and have some story of like, oh, I can't do it, and so then I'm just going to lean into giving up and doing the old thing.
Hey, you. I wanted to press pause on this episode for a second to talk about your fitness goals. Those sweet dreams of being more active and feeling athletic and confident and doing epic, adventurous shit. Or maybe you just feel like you're getting older, because we're all getting older. And you, like me, never want to give up on carrying all the groceries into the house in one shot or picking up that heavy Amazon box without worrying that you're going to throw your back out. I know you're busy. You're probably listening to this episode while multitasking. Oh yeah, I'm on to you. And the biggest thing that's stopping you from getting strong and fit is knowing how to use your workout time most effectively. Like exactly which exercises are worth your time, when to do them, and the number of sets and reps to get to your goals. You probably also tried other fitness apps and programs out there, only to feel like they weren't right for your needs. You want a program that has it all: strength, power, cardio, mobility, and recovery, all built right in without spending your whole life in the gym. And you want experienced coaches around to answer your questions, and a community at your back to help you stay motivated and inspired. Look, I've been coaching women for a long time now, and the truth is that you don't need another fad diet or complicated, time-consuming workout routine to support you as you age. You just need to train smarter with simple, progressive workouts and a plan that's designed for your body and your life, whether you're navigating motherhood, midlife, or menopause. And if this sounds like exactly what you've been missing, I invite you to join Stronger 365, a progressive strength, power, and conditioning training membership for women like you who are ready to stop winging it and take their training to the next level with more structure and support. And the best part? This program has 3 different options, so you can choose your own fitness adventure based on your goals, how much time you have to train, and what equipment you have, whether you've got access to a full gym or, like me, work out at home. And it's run by me, Allison Heilig, and my awesome team at Miles to Go Athletics. Head over to the show notes for all the details and to join our membership community. And as an FBG, your first 2 weeks are on me. And now, let's get back to the episode. I love that too, because there's a lot of scientific research on long-term weight loss, the ability to maintain it over longer periods of time. And as a coach working in this space, you see that there are some people that are very successful. They'll go through the process. They'll get 5 years down the line, and then the stars align in the worst possible way. Things just kind of happen. They get hit with a shitstorm all at one time, and then they revert back to these patterns they had before. And that can be this moment where they just slide back into an entire lifestyle that they thought they were over. They thought they were cured or that it was gone, and they make that mean so much in those moments too about who they are and how fragile it all was. And I work with a lot of clients who get to this place where they're on the verge of that next milestone and they are just waiting for the other shoe to drop because it has always dropped in the past. And so it's like they're anticipating that failure, finding that old highway again. They're already anticipating it. And that just pressurizes the whole system. And I see them start to become stressed about sliding back into this lifestyle they had before.
Right, exactly. So I think to help them think of it with the right view, because there's wrong view and there's right view. And we're talking about the wrong view is not knowing about the habenula, thinking it's that kind of thing. So the right view is these things happen in basically 3 big chunks. One is you're building the new highway. The second is you're preferring the new highway over the old highway. And then the long-term behavior change is that you've completed the brain rewiring and you've stabilized the new highway by integrating this into your self-image. So when you hear somebody say, I'm like just doing this, but it's not really me. So at some point it has to dock into the me in order for it to last. Because once it's inside the little safe house of the me, which is the narrative self, which is dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, then there is a automaticity to those habits. And even if one no longer appeals to you, I can't stand any more chicken, I can't, whatever the case may be, the instruction, that the pith instruction is to iterate your way towards your new version of that. But there's such a fundamental anchor in the self and who I think I am. Because I know this so well. I was a full-blown fast food drive-through addict coming out of Oklahoma as a teenager going to college. And that identity was with me for it's like 20 years maybe. And I remember just like feeling helpless, felt like two persons. Like one was like, don't go to the drive-through. And the other one's like controlling the car, you know? And then the whole inner dialogue as I'm like grabbing the bag, thank you, you know, and I'm just like, I feel like the worst person on the planet. Why can't I control myself? I know that. I know that world. But it just little by little, like I would sometimes go hours more before I would, of just resistance to go to the drive-through. But you have to think of that as a win, not a caving. The caving doesn't matter. It's how many minutes I was able to like just distract myself or do something other than go through the drive-through. So there's different iterations on this that I want people to see the world as a series of options that are iterations. And it's just like clothing in a store. You're trying it on. You're like, not the right color, maybe a good fit. Oh, I like this one. And then also, if I like this one, how long are you going to like it for? Are you going to die in that thing? Your taste you'll get tired of it, or the fashion will change. It's not a forever thing. So we have to think about these things in the right way.
Yeah. You were touching on measuring progress. I like to think of the Super Mario Brothers games. You play level 1 and there are minimal challenges. It might take you a little while to get through it, but there's not a lot of those fireballs coming at you or those moving slider things. Like it's relatively, it's more manageable. Yeah. And then the next level gets a little bit harder and they get harder as you go along, as your skill builds, right?
Yeah.
And seeing those incremental increases in skill or in behavior change, or that pause gets a little bit longer, whatever the case may be. If you're seeing that there is some progression, that you're better than you were before, there's still progress, even if you end up at the same result. And that's where I think people really struggle with. It's like, it doesn't matter because I still ended up doing the thing. And I'm like, no, it does matter. That is progress. That's how progress works in this.
And I think that's one of the benefits if you can work with a professional, because sometimes we are our own worst enemies.
We are.
And we can, certain people, that negativity bias is real. Like it's shown that people with depression or addiction, that their habenula shrinks. And an interesting study was like people who had bariatric surgery, their habenula went bigger, which means that your brakes, the brakes on your behavior, on the binging, on the impulsivity are stronger. But the state of addiction is that your brakes have shrunk and you can't control yourself. And then your habenula, when it's on, it is the most itchy, uncomfortable, like you need to shut it up. So that's when you reach for things or do things or whatever you do to shut your habenula up, that's when you feel it the strongest.
Yeah.
And so, when you have a professional who's like, hey, like, let's reframe this. It's not that you're the worst person on the planet. It's that this particular habit that you wanted to practice, and I use the word practice intentionally, is not right now. It's either not for you or it's not right now. And so let's put it on the shelf. In our software, I've had people say, oh, wow, I didn't like vegetables because they were always cooked. And I found that I only like fresh vegetables. Maybe because their mom was a terrible cook and she always overcooked the broccoli,
Yeah.
So they never thought it was tasty. And then they get over here and they're like, oh, wow. And then other people are the exact opposite. They're like, I can't stand fresh vegetables, but if I cook them, I can eat them. So everybody's different. And it's just going on that journey of personalization and figuring out what you can get yourself to do. Because at the end of the day, you're either trying or you're wallowing. You're either trying or you're not trying. And if you're not trying, it's because you're wallowing. It's not because you don't care about yourself. You do. But it's because this habenula's on and you're in some sort of story about I can't, or look what always happens to me. You've heard all of these things.
Yep. Yeah. It's so interesting because it almost sounds like it's a little too simple, right?
I love simple.
Yeah, I do too. I'm like, this is great. It's simple, but it's the simplicity of it is, I think, what makes it so fascinating and so cool to talk about. It's not as complex or complicated as, again, it's not you. It's not that there's something fundamentally wrong with you that can never be fixed. No. This is part of the process, and we just have to understand that. And we have to let go of some of these timelines and arbitrary deadlines that we've created. And instead of being in our self-judgment every time it doesn't go the way that we want it to, look at it with curiosity, like we are in a lab and we're just experimenting. And this didn't work. Or, hey, that was an epic fail. Or, hey, I got a little bit better this time, right? I got a slightly different result this time. And you look at it through that lens of curiosity and non-judgmental awareness rather than constant barrage of self-criticism that something is just so wrong with you that it can't be fixed or changed. Because that is what demotivates people, in my experience, more than anything else, is this feeling that there's nothing that they can do to change the thing. Yeah, that there's an obstacle in their way. Yep. The obstacle's in my way. The obstacle is me, and I can't change it. And that's, limiting me in some way. So clearly nothing that I try is going to work.
I think if you look at all what we call success in our world, you will find two primary things at the base of that. One is the person was somehow, some way able to turn off their habenula, neutralize any thoughts of failure. And failure has many cousins, disappointment, discouragement, demoralization, helplessness, powerlessness, all those feelings, right? They somehow had some way of turning that off. And then they also had a very rich history of iterating on something. You even take a professional athlete, which a lot of people think of them as like the ultimate in picture of self-control. Like they have this freakish ability to do things that are really uncomfortable and to do them consistently and to do them despite obstacles. And so a lot of people admire that. But if you break down any one of their stories, they're iterating their way through, whether they're a high diver and they're iterating through, oh, you got to point your toe this time, or like those kinds of things. They're iterating constantly, even though the net result of their career is a master performance of some kind. And then let's talk about being overly performative, because our society makes us sick by being overly performative. It teaches us through school, through grades, through measurements, through comparisons, through social media. We are all under a microscope of performative tools, tracking against other people, tracking ourselves against our past selves. It really makes us sick because performative things like SMART goals, things that are rigid, that can be used as the indictment against myself, anything that doesn't go as planned, it becomes a sharp tool and I cut myself with it. And so performative tools do work temporarily for short term, but they have a huge nasty side effect of habenula action eventually, not if, but when.
Yeah.
And then quitting. So when you get these people who are like, I used to, be able to do this. I used to be able to get myself to go around the track, even in the snow, or I used to, all that kind of stuff. That's performative because they got up to 3 miles or whatever a day, right? And then they got sick or they had to take care of a senior parent or whatever the case may be. And then habenula hit, then demotivation story about how bad I am and how hopeless I am.
Yeah.
So for performative tools, typically they work for like 5% of the people. So if you look at the US population in terms of just health and pinnacles of health, it's about 5% of the people in the United States, because everybody else has been burned by these overuse of these performative methods, these performative tools. In my research, my quantitative research, performative mindset, performative methods had a negative correlation with habit formation. But iterative mindset, iteration, people who use that has a 3 times stronger correlation with that than optimism, than resilience, than grit, like self-efficacy, all these other gold standards. So I think we found the holy grail of behavior change. Yeah, I truly do.
Yeah. And I see that too in the clients that come in and they're like, I am hiring you because I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to get on track. And you can hear the all or nothing mindset oozing off of them. This is what it's going to be. It's going to be this, and I'm going to be happy and it's going to work. And but
and you're my super ego.
Yeah, I get that all or nothing mindset has benefits and it can be helpful in some situations. Some people can benefit from rigid rules, but agree, temporarily. It's never sustainable because you're not actually changing your behavior, you're just white knuckling your way through it until you can't take it anymore. And then there's a big story about it, because if you said that I have to do this, I have to be who I used to be, I have to work out 5 times a week and I need to never eat a piece of chocolate ever again, and that's the only way I'm going to be happy, then you're setting yourself up to not be happy if that's what you
Yeah.
believe, because that's not the reality that we all live in. You're
Right.
going to get sick. There's going to be things that come up. And if you don't have the ability to be cognitively flexible in those moments, then you're going to feel that resurgence of all of that self-loathing and that criticism. And when you were talking about it, I was like, yes, yes, yes. It's not, I mean, I get it. It sounds good. Just tell me what to eat and tell me when to work out. Yeah, great. But I can't do that because that's not going to work for you. That is not how this works. That's not my job. My job is to help you do 1% better or find something that's doable so that we can just bring the baseline up rather than trying to raise the ceiling. We're going to raise the floor. And if we can do that, it's more sustainable. It's a long game. So you're going to stay in it longer. You're going to feel good about these incremental changes that you're making rather than just shooting yourself in the foot by saying it has to be 7 days a week and I need to do it perfectly, because you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, where do you place the you, or where do you place the me, dear person? Because if you're placing the me as the one who rebels, as the one who is inconsistent, is the one who is unwilling to try this thing, that the other part of you has signed you up for, or again, hired this other person to like force you, and that kind of thing. So it's really important to place the me around like, hey, who you are is the one trying to see what you can get the other part of you to do. Because the other part of you has a really good reason for protecting you, for being efficient with her energy, like not trying things that are going to feel bad or foolhardy or whatever. So we're really trying to reach that inner person, whatever part you want to call that. And you might even play with like, what would you name that? Because for me, it was like resistance to exercise is all about just being pushed too hard to exercise as a means of weight management as a teenager, because my family's eating was out of control. And that was what I was taught to do. I never got to the place of exercise bulimia because I just simply didn't enjoy exercise. I never got a runner's high. And I think if I had, I probably would have become an exercise bulimic because that's what I was being encouraged to do. Yeah. But, it's just one part of you is trying to appeal to the other part of you. And what you're looking for is that she does it like once, and that's great. Or maybe twice. But you're like, oh, I'm onto something here. I'm getting warmer of what she likes to do or what she's willing to do right now.
Yeah.
And then when she stops doing it, it's like, okay, I'm not going to like punish you. I'm not going to hate you. I'm going to find the next thing I can get you to do, because now we need to engage you in this other thing. And that's where the iteration comes in.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. This is great. So the iterative mindset method, did we cover that well, or is there more to that? I'm curious.
I haven't. Yeah, my book is a precursor to that. So my current project is to articulate this for the public more readily. But for right now, it's being used to build software for my company, which is like a free, non-exploitive, we don't sell data. We're really, truly trying to help people app for eating healthy, for moving more, for health habit formation, and using all the habit science as well as the neuroscience. But my intention this year is to get some tools out there so that people can use the iterative mindset method. And I'll just say it's 3 parts. One is assess. And this is derived from research on thousands of people who changed their behavior long-term.
Okay.
So I back engineered what is it that caused them to succeed where everybody else failed,
Connect the dots. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I came from the performative tools, are the standard world as a clinician, as a researcher. Like I did all that, I didn't know any better, but this discovery changed everything. What they did was they assessed, like, is this working for me? Is it not? Do I need to do something else? But not dwelling on it. Like some, men, for example, are just like, oh, it's not working. Let's just do this other thing.
And women ruminate.
Like they're like rubber and glue, right? Like they can bounce off the assessment, just be like, whatever, But the operant part of it is, are you neutralizing any notion or story of failure? That you're failing at this. And failure has, again, all those shades. Failure disease has a lot of different forms in people. And then the next thing is practice, picking that practice. Again, most likely you're not going to get it on the first try. But working the problem, you're like, oh, I didn't like cooked vegetables. Like all that stuff helps you to hone in on the thing that she will do, the thing that the part of you that you're trying to, the doer in you is going to be able to do. Yeah. And then it's just about reps, practice.
Get those
is
reps.
just about reps. Yep. It's all about reps because you're just trying to send to the brain like, hey, this is a new highway we're building and I want to drive this every day and I want to live like this. And we're not going to take that other highway as much. And hopefully ever someday, like this.
Yeah.
So you're just investing, you're investing.
Yep.
You're in the building phase, right? And then the third part of it is the iteration. And that just gets you unstuck, like, oh, I'm on the bad highway again. Oh no, I'm in bad habits. Like you can iterate your way out of hell. I've seen it. I've done it. I have helped people do it. And I think it's so funny because I never read the book reviews, but there was this one on my book where this one reviewer was like, the book's well reviewed, but I love like when people it doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
And this one person was like, oh my God, the author's so ridiculous. She thinks that iteration is the solution to everything. And I was like, well, at least you got the point.
Yeah.
That was my point. That's good.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Exactly what I'm saying. I said what I said. So, I think it's interesting because people are at different developmental stages of hearing about this information and absorbing it. And sometimes you got to bump your nose, you got to skin your nose a couple of times before you're going to give up on the performative, rigid, self-flogging way of doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This was so amazing. Any key takeaways that you want to add?
I just want to go down to history. Like failure is an illusion. You cannot fail at living your life.
Yep.
You are here to learn. You are here to iterate, and iteration and adaptation and flexibility is the way to happiness. There's no other thing. I have tried it all. I've seen it all. So place your energy there.
Yeah. You're not going to just arrive one day. It's process.
Until you take your last breath, you're going to.
Yes, I know.
This.
Why are we in a rush to get to that point, right?
I don't know. I always was. Yeah. I slowed down when I realized like, oh, I'm old. So yeah, I got to slow down now. I don't need to be older now. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need to rush it anymore.
Just relish.
Yes. Kyra, this was amazing. Thanks so much for coming on. This has been so helpful. Yeah. So people can find you on your website and LinkedIn. We're going to link to both of those in the show notes so people can find you easily. You mentioned your app. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Fresh Try, TRI is how you spell it, .com. Okay. Downloads on, all the apps. And again, no cost, no data selling, no ads. There's no gotchas. Believe it or not, I'm a public health physician. So this is what you get.
Awesome. I love it. And anybody who's ready to go deeper into this topic, they should absolutely grab a copy of your book, The Unstoppable Brain, the new neuroscience that frees us from failure, eases our stress, and creates lasting change. Such a great read. Highly recommend. Thank you so much for being here. This was so great.
Yeah, I had fun. Thanks so much for having me.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Fit Bottom Girls podcast. But don't worry, we're dropping new episodes every Thursday. In the meantime, head over to the show notes for all the links from today's episode, or go to fitbottomedgirls.com/podcast to catch up on past episodes. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next week.